Welcome back folks, my name is LastKnownMeal and today we're going to talk about Cyberpunk 2077. Well, more precisely, we're going to take a look at the community interviews on Discord where Paweł Sasko, the lead quest designer for the game, and Miles Toss, the senior level designer, jumped into Discord to talk with the community, so let's get into it. Before we begin, huge props to Netrunner 2077 community website for organizing all the questions and answers. So first off, let's go with Pawew's answers to community questions. For the first question, they were asked about that Johnny Silverhand samurai sequence and if that is actually braindance. Honestly, I think yes, we shall see though, because they couldn't answer yet, but that concert is going to be the one to remember, as Dev said it before. We even saw Kerry Eurodyne for a quick second, which is really cool, but overall, when you think about Johnny Silverhand, about Samurai, they fell apart a long time ago, so it won't really make sense for them to be there in 2077. I do believe that this is actually a brain dance from before. They also touched on the topic of combat, especially melee combat, and how it looks better than the last time. Obviously this makes sense because devs are still working on that to optimize it and tweak the settings, and it does look better, not gonna lie, especially when it comes to collision between the blades and how certain animation is done for the fighting. Then they were asked a very good question if side quests offer the same amount of choices as the main story, or do they differentiate, and Paweł said this. It all depends, you know, we always start from the plot, so if it makes sense for the plot, it means it's there. If it doesn't make sense for the plot, it means there might be less choices depending on what it is. It all depends on what all was introduced to the story, because we want to make sure it makes sense and feels good. Our core principle is always we want to give the player as many choices as possible, but at the same time stay reasonable because we need to stay within our given budgets, as that's a given. Another thing is, we're always trying to give options that feel natural to player. For example, I should be able to do this. In most cases, you will be able to. There will be a scenario where you won't be given choices you'd prefer to, in order from a design standpoint to not destroy too much of that particular story or sway too much from the vision of choices given for that particular quest. So of course, some things will be limited. But generally there are plenty of options for side quests. We've put a lot of attention and detail into them. Obviously the main quest has a far larger budget than side quests and smaller content. So because of that, you'll probably have slightly less options depending on the quest. It's not really a rule, the rule is a derivative of the plot itself, and I think that makes most sense for us. Nice reasoning here, honestly, and of course not every quest will have a bunch of options. There is also budget which comes into play. Every single project has a particular budget, so when you say, okay, this is the quest I want, is it going to cost too much? You have to calculate that. So obviously some things, like some changes had to be made, but overall I really like the scope of the game, and I really like their honesty here. Of course, as it was tradition, they were asked about the November release date and how confident they are in it. Of course, Paweł couldn't comment too much on it, but he said that we're very confident in the November release date, but hey, day 91 is coming, so we shall find out soon. And remember those news that you don't have to finish the main quest to complete the game? Well, they also talk about that, and this is what actually Paweł said. And even before, when I made that video, I said I needed more clarification on this because, you know, it's an article and articles don't really give you the full story sometimes. But anyway, this is what Paweł said. I would love to clarify on that, I really would, but I'm afraid it'd make headlines anyway. Yeah, nowadays it's difficult without the internet running wild on it. It is correct what from I stated in that interview, but it depends on the definition you're using for what is the side quest and what is the main quest. That's the whole problem. The gist of what I said is, when you decide to do a side content, it opens up new paths that allow you to finish the game in more ways that were previously closed for you, and that's really the gist of it. I tried to explain it the best I could to a journalist who mostly understood what I meant, but some wording wasn't completely precise and Google translated that in different ways. Some people understood it correctly and some obviously started to really stretch it all over the place. At that point, when I try to clarify, it creates even more confusion, so sometimes I don't prefer to comment on it further. So I rather not make a mess and cause further confusion. It's really difficult at times to explain some things in simple terms due to complexity of our systems. I mean, yeah, side activities open up new options for the main quest, so I still doubt you will finish the game in like 10 minutes or whatever people were saying that you don't even have to go to the main quest, but it just varies. Like if you think about older games and when you think about certain side activities you did and how it opened up, let's say, new NPCs or new dialogue options, it's gonna be that. Obviously they're aiming for a lot of those things, you know, to happen, a lot of those variations, but this is basically what he maybe meant by that. But don't expect anything too crazy here, because the internet can actually stretch things, as Pavel said, a lot. Also, we are still not sure if we can hang out with people outside of the quests, like relationship interests, friendships, whatever. Devs couldn't comment on that yet, so we shall see. But basically what they mean by that is if we're gonna have an option like in GTA to call people on the phone and say let's hang out or something like that. I am not sure if we're gonna have this here. It would be a cool option to have, especially let's say you call in Jackie for a friendly beer, you know, just like that, and can find out maybe more lore information. But yeah, so far it's still open to discussion. Also, Pavel said you really need to finish the game a couple of times to really get the full scope of it, but at the same time it will be hard to track all of your choices and skills, so you will really have to be disciplined to have a different playthrough, which is a very interesting thing. I mean, The Witcher 3 had more endings, but you were still a predefined character, and certain things that happen and how you finish the quest, you know, there are variations, but I think you had 3 main endings for The Witcher that were kinda, in a sense, different, and then everything else was, you know, slight variation. But in Cyberpunk, you're gonna have more of it, because you're not a predefined character. You create the character that you want to be. Now, community also asked about roadblocks around the city, and Dev said that in some instances of the story you will be in one location and everything will be explained to you, like why is, you know, sometimes this area closed and what is happening, but they want you to have as much freedom as you can actually have. Obviously, as it was in The Witcher, some instances, let's say the Battle of Kaer Morhen, is going to be somewhat a closed environment where you know, have to go through that story mission. So it could happen the same with Cyberpunk. Certain areas will be locked off until you finish that main activity or whatever, but obviously everything else is going to be open world. Also, the animation sequence we have in the weapons trailer, Pavel said it's called the first equip, and it's like a cool animation you get from a new item you have obtained, but yes, this is in the game. Next up, we had a couple of questions for Miles Tost, especially about blocking of non-accessible buildings or doors, and he said this. Yeah, we try. It's not everywhere it's like that. We cannot put a bouncer in front of every door in the world, but in some areas we feel it's super obvious. Like if there is an area in the main quest with a door you cannot enter, in that context we'll try to put something extra there, but holy shit, man, the amount of doors we have in Cyberpunk will completely dwarf the amount of doors we have in The Witcher 3. Again, I knew it. I knew there was gonna be a door discussion on this interview. At one point in The Witcher 3 development, I counted the amount of doors we have. We have around 2,500 doors for that game. Naturally, in a game like this, compared to The Witcher 3, there are far more doors in the world of Cyberpunk. Very cool. And for the end, they talked a bit more about creativity during quests, and Miles said that they are still going through the missions, you know, adding certain stuff, optimizing the environment, etc. Which means that sometimes he will add something and then, you know, QA will come and say, look, I found a new way to finish this mission. Was it intended? Did you actually mean for this? And then you have to go fix and tweak that stuff. So I guess, you know, that's just one final polishing push, you know, it's still ongoing. And it might be just the tone that I'm getting from this, but I'm getting really confident that there won't be any more delays. Again, things can change, of course, but to be honest, they wouldn't push the marketing so much right now if the game is going to be pushed into 2021. Wouldn't make much sense, but we shall see. They did talk a little bit about weapons, and someone counted that if they go through, let's say, tech weapons, power weapons, and smart weapons, that's if you have 10 of those and if you have variations, then you know you have 180 weapons in the game. Obviously they couldn't comment on that, but they do have a separate team that is only working on weapons in this game, so I definitely expect a lot of variations and a very good amount of weapons in the game, as well as cyberware. You know, it's not everything with the weapons, it also comes with cyberware. And that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I have another lore video coming this week, excited about it, so subscribe to be the first to find out when I will upload. And thank you so much for watching. Also join our growing community on Twitter and Discord. I also made a Patreon page. If you were looking for an extra way to support the channel, you can do it through that. I left the link down below. And huge thanks to my current Patreon supporters. This is LKM signing out, and stay classy everyone. Bye bye.